Okay. Okay. Good morning or good afternoon. Actually, for all of you that are on, it's good morning. We are in a new week, Monday, and this week's Parsha is the Parsha of Toldos. And this is when things really start getting kicked into high gear. What I mean is there's going to be a lot of fighting, and you're really going to see the dysfunctionality of our forefathers and their families. Not that they were dysfunctional, but the family dynamics were very dysfunctional. And but we'll peer why would the Torah record such negative stories, just highlight very negative personalities and weird family dynamics. There must be a lesson, and we will get into that a little bit. See, people are stealing blessings from another person. People are killing other people. It's pretty wild. So I want to just start with the Hayom Yom, what's the message of today? And each day there's a different message. And I think it's pretty, for the 26th day of Cheshvan, which is today, I feel like today's Hayom Yom really connects with what we're going to talk about. So the Hayom Yom of today comes from the previous Rebbe, and he writes down in his diary, he says, the true way is to know one's character, truly recognizing one's own deficiencies and one's good qualities. You have to know both, your deficiencies, and your good qualities. When one knows his deficiencies, he should correct them with actual work and not satisfy himself merely with bemoaning them. We don't just say, what can I do? We're all about action. We really take action. We make plans. Jews make plans. Yeah, now, of course, we make plans and God laughs. But nevertheless, we have to make plans. We make plans. Traditionally, that's what we do. We write them down. We have schedules. It's very important to keep to a schedule. It's called a Seder. Seder is very important in Judaism. We see our sages were very much into having Sidarim. An Seder literally means order, a schedule. That's the Passover Seder is it's the order of what to say. Seder, whatever, the word Seder comes up very much. And we don't just, sit there and bemoan, as it says, our deficiencies and that which we need to work on, but we actually take action. And very often a person will ask themselves, what's my mission in life? So our sages tell us and emphasize very much in Chassidus that whatever you have a difficulty doing, so whether, let's say you, you have a difficulty being warm to people, that could very well possibly be your avoda, your service, what your main mission in life is, to try to work on that, being warm. And there are life hacks to helping oneself and changing oneself, and we're going to get into a little bit into this week's Parsha and use out the life hacks. Yeah, I posted on Instagram yesterday a life hack about humility, which is the foundation, one of the foundations of Judaism. Take advantage, use life hacks. And we'll see perhaps a couple of them in this bizarre Parsha. What does this Parsha open up about? It deals with the birth of Yaakov and Esav, Jacob and Esau. And it says that Rivka, like her mother-in-law, whom she never met, had no womb. She could not have children. And Yitzchak prayed on her behalf, and she had a womb, and she was able to she got pregnant. She conceived, and she got pregnant. And it said her pregnancy was extremely difficult, extremely painful, and extremely difficult. What happened? One of the things that happened was anytime she would walk past a place of idol worship, it would start, her stomach, the baby would start kicking. In her mind, she said the baby was kicking very hard, trying to get out. And then when they passed a place of Torah, there were yeshivas back in the day, even then, the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, who are the sons and grandsons of Noah. He started a yeshiva. And anytime she'd pass one of these yeshivas, the baby would kick again. And she was like, what is going on here? I have a baby who's confused about life. It's hard to relate, but that's that's what happened. And she was very nervous. So she went to the yeshiva. It's not clear who spoke to her, but it seems to be that Shem himself, the son of Noah, spoke to her and said, it's not one baby in your belly, you got two babies. And he said, one will become, he was clairvoyant, and he said, one will become a great nation. One will become more numerous than the other. The older one will become more numerous, but he'll be subservient to the younger one. And we see that to be true. And he said, he concluded that when one is on top, the other will be down. And when the other is on top, the other will be down. So vice versa. Now we know that which nation comes from Esav. The tradition tells us Romans, Italians, I guess. No, but Romans, the Roman Empire came from Esav. And that's going to be significant in what we'll talk about. So they told her, you got two nations in your body. And don't be so nervous. But this conflict inside, that basically Esav was the one that wanted to go anytime there was idol worship, he would try to get out. And then Jacob, anytime they passed by yeshiva, he tried to get out. And they said this conflict between the two nations will continue until Mashiach comes. So, well, who is Esav? It says something very interesting. It says that Yitzchak loved Esav more than he loved his son Yaakov, which is kind of bizarre. It says that Esav was a tzayid bepiv. His mouth would be a trap. And the explanation that Rashi brings down is he would trick his father. He would say one thing. He would act very humble in one. Yeah, he would put on a show. He would say like, "Oh, I'm very religious," and he would ask like how to tithe things that you're not obligated to tithe on. He would trap his father. His father would think he was very religious. And Yaakov, it said, but he was actually a wild man. It says that he would trap people with his mouth, meaning he would trap animals and kill them inhumanely. You'll see that he married pagan women and he murdered. Not a very good guy. He tried to kill his brother Jacob many times, even as children. And it says that, and how can he love him more than Yaakov? It says Yaakov was an ish tam. He was a wholesome person. He studied Torah, humble. It says that Rivka, his mother, loved Yaakov more, which the fact that the Torah even records such a thing, to say like one parent loved the child over another, is very interesting. But perhaps the Torah is telling us that, there is love. You have love for all of your children, but maybe parents have a certain, shows more of a desire for another child to succeed, or there's a bigger investment in the other child naturally. I want to invest in this child. Typically, a child that's more like yourself, you can relate to better, and perhaps you appreciate them more because you get to know them. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, and because of this love, it made the family a little bit dysfunctional. We saw that even Avraham loved Yishmael, and I guess there was a certain more effort put into Yishmael, and that naturally harms, the other child in a certain way in terms of the relationship, and it could lead to dysfunctionality, which the Torah was trying to say, trying to bring out. Not to say that they did anything wrong, but it's a trap. You make sure you stay pretty, you show enough attention to all of them if possible. So what happened? What's the idea of Yitzchak over here? Just going along. The question is, was Yitzchak really duped into loving Esav? Was he really taken in? It says that Yitzchak was a very stern, a very masudar, a very orderly person. He stayed home. He never left the land of Israel, unlike Abraham and Yaakov and Yosef and all the other people. He stayed home. He was very clear on life. You'll see that he didn't have much of a struggle. That's why he's not very much recorded in the Torah. The Torah only really records people who go through struggles, because there's a lot of challenges in life, and how to deal with them, how to face them, and what's the proper perspective on them. That really they're there to build you up. Nevertheless, Yitzchak did not have such issues. So, and Yitzchak was obviously a total tzaddik. He was brilliant. Did he really think that Esav was, did he really get duped by Esav? So we'll find out, no. And the Torah even says that he really knew that Esav was not as, that Yaakov was clearly much more of a wholesome, healthy person than Esav was. And that Esav really had serious issues that he had to work out. And where do we see that? There's going to come the blessings in this week's parsha. They're going to have the blessings that Yaakov is going to steal from his brother. Yitzchak is towards the end of his life. He's 126 years old, I believe. Why 126? Did he feel like he was at the end of his life? It says in the Talmud that a person should look to see how far, how long did their parents live, or one parent, and you should start getting things, changing your perspective. Who died at around 126? Sarah. Sarah died. His mother, Yitzchak's mother, Sarah, died at 127. And she did not die prematurely. That's when she was supposed to die, pass away, or Neshama was supposed to leave her body, and he was getting ready. So what happened? We'll get into the story a little bit later, but Rivka, the mother, told Yaakov, dress up like Esav. Esav was a very hairy guy. Said, we're going to get you all hairy. You're going to go up there and to your father, who was blind. By the end of his life, he was blind. And you're going to steal the blessings. You're going to say that you're Esav, and he'll give you the special blessings. What happened? To Yitzchak, and steal the blessings. So Yitzchak calls over his son Yaakov and asks him how he's doing. And he says, Baruch Hashem, I'm doing well. Esav never would say, thank God. It says that the words of Torah were never in Esav's mouth. In Yaakov's mouth, they were. And that's when Yitzchak heard, who he thought was Esav, or at least that's what we think, who he thought was Esav, not mention Hashem's name, he was like, whoa, that's out of character. And he records it. Wow, the kol Yaakov, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are Yedei Esav. When I feel your hands, they feel like Esav, but the kol Yaakov, but the voice is the voice of Yaakov, the voice of sweetness, of Torah, of thanking Hashem. So we see clearly that Yitzchak knew that Esav wasn't this great tzaddik. He didn't really say, Baruch Hashem, thank God we're doing well. He was clear, he knew. So why did Yitzchak show so much attention to Esav? Because he understood there are two dimensions to every human being. There is what's called koiches hapanimiyim and koiches hamakifim. There is like this internal part of who you are. The way I interact with you on a day-to-day, that's the way. If I sit down and have a conversation with you, I'll get your character, I'll get your personality. But then there's an aspect of you called makifim, which we've spoken about many times in Chassidus. Literally means like envelops. It's beyond you. It's a much deeper and more spiritual dimension of who you are. It's more of like within the subconscious or the supra subconscious. It doesn't make its way into the day-to-day interactions. It's a higher level of your soul. And what happens is, and that comes from what's called the world of Tohu. There was, before God created this world that we see, which is called the world of Tikkun, the world of fixing, there was a world of Tohu, which we've spoken about many times, which where the attributes of godliness shown, were expressed so intensely that they shattered the vessels in which tried to capture them, without getting into too much detail. And eventually God, those shattering of vessels fell into this world, the world of Tikkun, and we try to get those little sparks that fell, those little cracks, those little breaking of the vessels. We try to elevate them once again. That's part of our avoda, our service to God. That's Kabbalah 101. We'll get into that. We'll save that for Tuesday night's Chassidus class. Nevertheless, he comes from a very high level. And what Yaakov was what Yitzchak saw in Esav was this very high level. And we see this very often in the Torah, where the famous sage Reish Lakish. Yeah, Rabbi Meir and Reish Lakish. What's the story of Reish Lakish? Reish Lakish was a sage, one of our greatest sages ever. He was a bandit. He was a robber, and he mistook his future brother-in-law as a woman. He thought he was a woman, and he jumped into the river to try to seduce her. And he realized, oh, this is a man. And the sage Rabbi Meir saw that he was a man of great spiritual potential. Tzaddikim are able to see who you really are, not the way that the who you are, like the front of you, but there's a deeper aspect to you, a more encompassing aspect that we try to get to trickle in to your personality. What Yitzchak saw in Esav was he came from this very high level, but who did he see specifically, says the Torah? He saw who was going to come from Esav. Who comes from Esav? The Romans. But who from the Roman Empire became Jewish? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Akiva, Shmai Naftalion, Onkelos. These are the architects of the oral tradition. These are the greatest sages to exist, some of the greatest sages to exist in the Jewish people. They all came from converts. They all came from Rome. They all came from Esav. Because what Yitzchak saw was eventually there's this potential there that I'm trying to get out as quickly as possible. I don't want to have to wait 1,000 years for this potential to be realized. Let me put in the effort now for it to reveal itself. And we see this very often in Jewish tradition. And what the lesson is clear, that every single, the more wild you see someone, Chassidus very much emphasizes this. You see a certain attribute, a characteristic about somebody. We say that their soul can't handle the vessel. Yeah, there's something wild about them. In truth, they come from a very high level. And if you can somehow harness that, they have a certain proclivity towards something which is inappropriate, but it's not necessarily inappropriate, it's wild. If you can harness that energy, there's great potential there. And the job of the one involved, whoever is coming across them, is to try to harness that energy and use it out in the right way, express itself. And eventually it will express itself in the right way. There are stories of tzaddikim when a child with, perhaps like Down syndrome or a certain, some sort of, not Down syndrome, but something even more like the more like mental, like mental incapacities, whatever the proper term is, somebody who is, they're not fully here, the tzaddikim would stand up, because they would stand up for this person when they came in, because they saw who they really were in potentia, that their neshama is so great, has so much whatever koichas pinimim, koichas makifim, that they were able to live it, and they experienced it, and they could feel it, and it was beyond their own capabilities. So they would stand up for such people. Whatever. This is a classic. There's a classic, and this is by every human being. And that's one of the lessons in the Torah, that there's no reason to give up on somebody. That in fact it just has to be harnessed in and used out in the right way. There's a very famous story of the Rebbe Maharash. The Rebbe Maharash is the fourth Chabad Rebbe. I'm Chabad, so we have a lot of Chabad Rebbe stories. He lived in the town of Lubavitch, and he was fluent in French. I don't know why he was fluent in French, but he was. But perhaps it was all for this reason. One day, it's a very Baal Shem Tov story. One day, he tells his secretaries, his right-hand people, he said, we have to go to Paris. And they didn't ask questions, like, okay, let's go to Paris. Now, to travel to Paris from the city of Lubavitch in Belarus, you can imagine how long it took and how expensive it was. But nevertheless, they did it. And they arrive in Paris. And he says, we're going to stay in the best hotel. Which is the best hotel here? You can imagine the best hotel in Paris in the early 1800s. I'm probably insane. And but the thing about that place was it was known to be, it's like Moulin Rouge. It was known to be very wild and very inappropriate. Certainly not a place for a Chabad or for a Hasidic Jew just to show up in with a long coat, payas, and a hat. You can imagine. But nevertheless, they do as they were told. This is a true story. And they go into this place. They go into the hotel, and they get a room on the first floor. And they don't know, the two secretaries don't know what they're doing there. But the Rebbe Marash says, I'm going into the bar. And it wasn't just a bar, it was a ballroom. And they describe, the secretaries who describe the story say, there was such inappropriateness going on over there that they couldn't handle being around. They actually had to leave. They said, we can't stay here. I don't know what was happening to them. They were fainting or whatever. But the Rebbe Marash walked up to the bar and sat next to this guy. And he spoke to this guy. And he said the words, Yayin Nesech. He said, Yid, Yayin Nesech metamtem es alev. Now, Jews, we try to drink wine that has a hechsher on it, a kosher symbol. And it's very important to drink wine from a kosher symbol, as a kosher symbol, a reliable kosher symbol. Otherwise, it's called yayin nesech, which means wine that's poured for idol worship. Now, you can obviously argue that there's nobody really does idol worship nowadays, for the most part, especially in the Western world. Nevertheless, we're still very careful, and it has very many Kabbalistic reasons for having specific kind of wine. So yayin nesech metamtem es alev means that kind of wine stuffs up the heart, meaning you become very insensitive to spirituality. And the Rebbe Ramash left, and they said the man an hour later came out crying and went into the Rebbe Ramash's room and was in there for many hours crying. They don't really know what actually happened. But nevertheless, the man left, went to his hotel room. The Rebbe Marash said, okay, now we can go. I don't even think they slept there. And they went all the way back to Lubavitch. The Rebbe Marash explained that this man's soul came from a very high level. And I saw that it was trapped in his this body. He never saw the man before. This is like a typical Baal Shem Tov story. Never saw the man before. How could he possibly have known in the city of Belarus, this little village in Belarus, what was going on in Paris? Nevertheless, there they go. The man came and showed up in Lubavitch a year later and became a huge, a tremendous teacher and mentor for the people. And we see that certain souls get trapped in bodies or in situations that they're tremendous capabilities and tremendous levels that they just need to be spoken to and taken out of. They need to take them out of the trap. So let's move on over here. Okay, so I just wanted to say a certain thing. We see that Esav was he doomed to be bad he was in the mother's womb. He was doomed. In his mother's womb, he was going after pagan temples and idol worship. Was he doomed from the beginning? And Chassidus explains that it's true. You might have a certain proclivity towards, natural. It's natural for you to do something harmful and do something negative from birth. So a child might act a certain way naturally, or have feelings towards something naturally. That's the key. They have feelings towards something negative or inappropriate or against Torah. But the Chassidus says that's fine. That's totally okay. And that's what the Torah is trying to teach us. It's fine. Maybe God did set you up that way, but you don't have to act on it. Because it's all about action. What goes on inside that internal struggle, we all have an internal struggle. We all have desires, sometimes positive desires, negative desires, emotions go all over the place. And we're not here to control our emotions. We're trying to perhaps turn the volume down, but we're not tzaddikim. God made tzaddikim, the perfectly righteous people, very few, says the Torah, very few, only a handful in every generation. So chances are you're not a tzaddik. Yeah, I'm not a tzaddik. I got an internal struggle. I got my own struggles. We all got our own struggles. The idea is, can we turn the volume down a little bit and certainly not act upon it? That's what Yitzchak saw, that ability. He was trying to turn the volume down. He was trying to teach Esav not to act upon it. And perhaps where did he get that? Where that high level? Where did that come from? That ability to be high? So you might think maybe it was from Abraham. He came from Yitzchak, from Abraham. But the Torah once again says a very interesting line. And the Torah is not Charles Dickens, as we say, doesn't get paid by the word. So if the Torah repeats a story or repeats something, it's to teach you something very significant. It says that Rivka was the daughter of Besuel and the brother of Lavan, of Laban. The Torah said that in the previous parsha. Why is it repeating it again over here? To teach you that who was Besuel? We know that Besuel was a horrible guy. He tried to kill Yitzchak, or he tried to kill Eliezer. In last week's parsha, he tried to kill Eliezer when Eliezer said, I would like for Rivka to come and marry Yitzchak. And he tried to kill him. Yeah, Besuel tried to kill him. And so that he would take all of his money and didn't want to, she was beautiful and he can get a lot more money out of her, using her. And then eventually he was killed. He was poisoned by an angel. The Torah records it in last week's parsha. A horrible guy, clearly a very horrible guy. And Lavan, who will get reintroduced again, because that's where Yaakov goes and runs when Esav tries to kill him after the blessings are stolen, which we'll talk about in a moment. Tried to, he was a master trickery, talk about Ponzi scheme, bad guy. Nevertheless, what happened to Rivka? Rivka was a tzaddikus. She was she was a sheshana. She was a rose amongst thorns. That she came out as a tzaddikus, as a perfectly righteous person. That even people from a seemingly negative, a very horrible situation, family situation, everything's working against you. Yeah, I live 20 minutes from Detroit. I don't live in Detroit, but I live 20 minutes. You see certain family situations over there. There ain't no way they're getting out. It is like a trap. And we talk about it all the time. And I have friends who live there. And we always think of ways like, how can we help them? What can we do? They're trapped. Like there's just no light to get out. Torah says that's not true. It might seem that way, but it's not true. And in fact, how could such a daughter come from such a family? Because they themselves also had this potential to be fantastic and spiritual. They were spiritual giants in and of themselves. It just never expressed itself. And they acted on their natural desires, which was naturally to be evil. They had natural negative, evil tendencies. But the problem is they would act upon it. And Rivka didn't act upon it. She had the spiritual potential and she was able to not let it out, or she was able to curb it in some positive way. So that's why the Torah goes ahead and repeats that famous line, that she was the daughter of Besuel, the brother of Lavan. That even no matter what your family situation is, no matter what your environment is. Now the Rambam says you should do all you can to get out of negative family situations, negative certainly communities. You have to get out of there. If you're in a place of bad influence, when you stop influencing others and they start influencing you in a negative way, you have to get out. And that's it. That's a halacha. It's not just a good idea. It's the Jewish law. So even though their family was so evil, great powers were found within. Okay, so during the actual pregnancy, we said that Esav would kick by pagan places. Let's see over here. Okay, anyway, let's talk a little bit about that. So now we get into, the Torah goes into a great detail about Yitzchak digging wells, which is very boring. He dug wells, his father dug wells, Abraham would dig wells. It says about Abraham, when he would dig wells, the Plishtim, the Palestinians that live there, Plishtim, that's what they're called, Plishtim, they would cover it back up. They would fill the holes of the wells back up. And here Yitzchak, it talks about many times all the wells that Yitzchak dug and how successful he was at digging wells. Very nice. What is the wells? What's the lesson for us? Who cares about well digging? I grew up in drinking well water, by the way. I don't know if it tastes any better, but so really the wells can only be understood on I think on a chassidus level. And we know there's something called hamshacha milmayla lamata and hamshacha milmata lamayla. There's something called an arousal from above and an arousal from below. Now, this is my favorite. One of my friends has a great line. I say it all the time. That inspirational videos. You guys watch inspirational videos. What do? All they do is make you want to watch more inspirational videos. To be honest, they don't really change you. Now you might say, oh, I try to watch it as much as I can. And, you just have to keep watching. Basically, you just have to keep taking the drug, and maybe hopefully you'll be motivated to do actually something, actually take some sort of action. And this is the reason why I said the Hayom Yom for today. Because if you want to change, says the Hayom Yom, you have to change. You have to look at your deficiencies and you have to change. But you can't just sit there and be like, oh, sit there and be bitter. Not depressed, by the way. The Torah is against being depressed. If you want to change yourself and you feel depressed about the way you acted, that's wrong. That's coming from the Yetzer Hara, says the Torah. The way you're supposed to feel is bitter. You're saying, you have to say to yourself, I'm so much better than this. I'm disgusted basically with the way I acted, and I will act towards a more positive way. But instead of saying like, I'm a loser, I'm a nothing, the Torah says that's not holy. That's the Yetzer Hara. That's just trying to keep you down. That is the inappropriate way to react. The real way to react is actually to keep moving on, keep going. The Torah says, how do you change? Through actual work. The question is like this. Let me preface it. When the Jewish people got the Torah from Mount Sinai, the 10 Commandments, and they saw God openly. 3 million people saw God and testified. Yes, we definitely experienced God. We heard 2 voices at the same time saying 2 different, just crazy, unbelievable stuff. Their souls left their bodies. Then they came back and there's a historical event. 3 million people testified to this. And they remember it and they pass it on. They said, we're going to tell our generations forever. Unbelievable. Then what happens 40 days later? They serve a golden calf, idol worship. And one of the 10 commandments themselves is they heard from God's mouth, don't serve idols. And what do? 40 days later is serve idols. How could that possibly be? Because it was inspiration. There was if I impose upon you my will, and in this case, it was something positive, like God revealed himself. And wow, that's incredibly inspirational. Imagine even just being around a great person. You change. You naturally change. You naturally are lifted up. But it doesn't change you from the inside. Real change you have to do real change. So the fact that it was basically just inspiration, God, that whole episode, even how incredible and how great it really was, it was inspiration. And as soon as the inspiration dissipates, which it will, by design, God designed it that way, you're just going to go back to the way you were. And not only that, you're going to, when you get raised up very high and then you fall very quickly, you end up falling, you continue to fall because you say to yourself, I'm a nothing. Well, I really have not done anything. And you get depressed and you go even deeper. Torah is very careful about inspiration. And that's why the Torah records the story of Mount Sinai. One of the lessons is don't get caught up in the inspiration. The inspiration is there to just move you a little bit, change your perspective, change your focus. It just wants you to look a different direction. The whole act is now going to be on your own. You have to do the act. And that the work that's done on your part, which is called hamshacha milmata lamayla, it's an arousal below to above, is represented by the wells, the digging of the wells. Abraham, he would dig wells. He was a person that revealed godliness. There was miracles by him. Everyone saw the miracles by him. They wanted to be around him. They wanted his money. They would give their children to Sarah to nurse. He would constantly give. He gave away everything. It was a giver. You did nothing to deserve it, and he would just give it to you. Okay, that was represented by his wells. He would dig wells, but then they would get filled back up. Yeah, he was able to change the ground and help the foundation, but it didn't last. Yitzchak was a person who worked on himself. And he would dig the wells, and the wells stayed. The Torah is teaching us over and over again, repeating something seemingly so boring, that the wells, you want to find the water. The water is all the true pleasures in life. Pleasure is the foundation of pleasure is with water, according to Kabbalah. Water is Torah. Water is life. It's sustenance. You can't go days without water. You want to really live a life of blessing and of life of true purpose. And you have to work on it yourself. You have to begin with yourself. It's not enough just to bemoan. It's not enough just to hang around, watch inspirational videos. You have to actually start doing the work yourself. And the Torah emphasizes many lines to that. Now, I will say, again, I'm all about life hacks. I love life hacks. the Torah does say that a quick way to really change yourself, obviously, is to hang around people who are greater than yourself. Now, not materially necessarily, but certainly spiritually, people of greater character, because it shines a light. It lets you know the proper path. It lets you know the right way. And I just want to say, if you're ever feeling very inspired, a nice little hack is imagine. I learned this in yeshiva. Imagine yourself, if you're feeling very inspired, now start imagining yourself. What would you be doing on a normal Tuesday afternoon? Yeah, hanging around certain people that perhaps are very uninspired. Just transport yourself there and continue to allow the inspirational message to penetrate. Basically, it's very easy. Judaism says like this: you shouldn't go why don't we go to the Himalayas and just like meditate on a mountain over there? Simple, isn't that great? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, Rabbi Elazar, spent 12 years in a cave, and they reached incredible spiritual levels, more than anybody could have imagined. But then what happened when they came out of the cave? They started destroying the world because they couldn't fathom. They were so spiritually great, they couldn't see people. They couldn't handle people acting so mundane. The Torah is very much against you going and living. Yes, you can reach great spiritual heights, living on top of Mount Everest or whatever it is, away from the whole entire world, just studying Torah and staying away from all the pleasures of the world, not getting involved in anything to bring you down. You for sure could, but that's not what we want. We want you to live within the world. And in fact, you'll become disgusted by the world. You won't be able to function, and therefore you won't be able to have any effect upon the world. God says, I don't want angels. I'm not here. If I wanted you to just be this perfect being and not get involved in anything, I would have stopped creation by the angels. No, I created you with all the issues and stuff you got to go through. Yeah, family issues, mortgage, 4 seasons of weather if you live on the East Coast. Everything's going well, then boom, you get into a car accident and you got a $800 bill. I want you to succeed within those moments. I want you to take all the inspiration and infuse those moments with inspiration. Find the godliness, find the blessing within those situations as well. And that's the idea of the digging of the wells. That even in those situations, the earth, the very earthly parts, where you really get dirty, I want to see the spirituality in that. I want to see the godliness in those situations. And that's how you'll actually change. Esav gets married. The Torah basically concludes that Esav gets married at the age of 40. Again, this whole idea, because his father got married at the age of 40. Yitzchak got married at the age of 40. He says, it's time for me to get a wife. And he ended up marrying these like pagan idol worshippers. And it actually left, there was a lack of tranquility in the home. That even within Yitzchak's home, there was a misalignment, a misbalance. It was very unbalanced spiritually in the home when he married these women, and Yitzchak felt that. So again, Yitzchak knew who he was dealing with. And the Torah gets into the whole trickery over here. The whole trickery that we spoke about a little bit earlier. Why did Yaakov steal the blessings from his father? What happened? What's the story? So Yitzchak says to his son Esav, near the end of my life, I want you to go get me some venison, some deer meat, and then I will give you a blessing. Now, something I forgot to mention. Esav came home from very tired and weary one day. He was killing, he was murdering, and he was extremely hungry. It says that when a person sees someone die, like in a very unhealthy way, or they're involved in, like, God forbid, like murder. If you interview the people, they'll say, I get very hungry. I'm extremely hungry after that, witnessing that or experiencing that. So Esav came home and he was very hungry, starving. And he saw Yaakov there eating lentils. And he said, I want those lentils. Give me those lentils. So Yaakov said, I'll take those lentils if you give me the firstborn rights. I want to be officially, spiritually, the firstborn child. Esav they're twins, but he came out first. So he's considered the firstborn. And Esav said, fine, you can have the firstborn. Just give me the lentils. So he got the firstborn rights, which comes with a lot of spiritual blessings, and there's a lot, even halachically, from a Jewish perspective, like law perspective, there's a lot of you get first dibs on a lot of things. So, but Yitzchak didn't know that. And what happened? Yitzchak said to his son Esav, I'm nearing the end of my life. Go prepare me some food, and I'll give you the blessings afterwards. I need to eat. I need more energy, and I need to, which also has spiritual significance to it. But I'll give you these blessings. And Rivka got wind that Yitzchak was going to give these blessings, and these were going to be very special blessings. And we say these blessings every Motzei Shabbos. After Shabbos concludes, we say these blessings, and we say this in the prayer. And Rivka tells her son Yaakov, you got to get hairy. I'm going to go shear some wool, and you're going to put it on your hand. You're going to put it on your arms. And you're going to be hairy because Esav is hairy, and you're going to pretend to be Esav. We're going to use some trickery. And he tricks Yitzchak, so to speak. In a deeper level, Yitzchak really knew, but and by him knowing, Kabbalistically, by him, he knew that he was being tricked, so to speak, but he knew that it was really Yaakov, because he understood that Rivka was telling him, again, all the women always had more prophecy. They were more clairvoyant than the husbands. He understood that Rivka was telling him that stop giving all this to Esav. He's not ready yet. And really it has to go to the one that's more fitting. And that is Yaakov now. And these blessings were only supposed to be given to the firstborn. Yaakov bought the firstborn rights, and he got it. And he gives the blessings. Yitzchak gives the blessings to Yaakov, thinking it's Esav. Esav finds out and tries to kill Yaakov. And that's when he has to run away. What's this whole trickery? And it goes back to my lines all the time over here about life hacks, that people think that in order to change the world spiritually, you got to just head on. You got to play by the rules, so to speak, play by the rules of the world, however the world, and just be upfront about everyone. Someone's not keeping Shabbos, you scream in their face, keep Shabbos. Torah says no, that's not the right way to do it. You got to do the bait and switch a little bit. People, there has to, sometimes things have to be done through trickery, that they're not ready to experience what you have to say to them. They're not ready to experience, they're not ready to be confronted in a certain way. You have to work around it. Yeah, find a way to work around. And through that, you'll be successful. That's a very, I know that sounds a little bit controversial, but that is what the Torah is trying to teach us. And I just want to end with one little thing. Obviously the question is, how did Yitzchak trust the shchita, the slaughtering of Esav? Esav was a bad guy, and we know the laws of kosher are very stringent, and we're very careful with them. How did he let his brother? How did he let his son, who's like evil guy who never spoke about God, shecht an animal for him? And the laws of shchita, the laws of kosher an animal, killing and slaughtering an animal properly, are very complicated. Why did Yitzchak say, go kill a deer and bring it to me? I don't know if I would eat his kashrus, his hechsher level. So in halacha, there is a concept of if you know someone, first of all, is knowledgeable in the laws of kosher, and even though they themselves don't keep the laws of kosher, but they know the laws of kosher, and they know they wouldn't want to trick you. They wouldn't want to put a stumbling block in front of you. They respect you. You can trust their kashrus. That's a letter from Moshe Feinstein. He wrote this letter in communist Russia. Basically, there was these religious families, and really the husbands were killed, and the mother was there, and she had to go move in with their children. And their children were communists. They didn't believe at all in God. They didn't believe at all in keeping kosher. And they were writing letters to the big rabbi, the Rav of the time. His name was Moshe Feinstein, Olav Shalom. May he rest in peace. And they said, can we trust our children's, the kosher level in their house? And he said, yes, you can do it, provided, number one, that they're knowledgeable, that they actually have to know the laws. People have good intentions, but if you don't know, they don't have the rules and the knowledge, it's going to be a problem. That's why it's very important to know halacha. But we see by Yitzchak trusting Esav. Esav, it says that Esav ultimately had a blessing, and he will merit to see Mashiach and live a tranquil life because he had kibbud av. He honored his parents. And the fact that Yitzhak could trust that Esav would do well with him, didn't want to put a stumbling block in front of him, would want to keep his level of kosher, so he was able to trust his children. Now, that's not a rule across the board, but very often you'll go to someone's house and be like, "Oh, it's kosher, it's kosher. I know everything's kosher." The problem is they might not actually know, even though they had good intentions and they really would have done what's right, but they actually have to know the laws, the laws of kosher themselves. Okay, does anybody have any questions? That's basically it on one nutshell, on one leg, one foot. Anybody have any questions? Okay, tonight, God willing, we will have the Seder Nigunim. I'll teach a Nigun / Fabrengen. And I want to remind everybody that we're going to have a JLI course tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. There will be a JLI course given by Rabbi Schneer. There will not be Chassidus. That will be taking place instead. All right, you have any questions, just text me. This class is dedicated in honor of Dinah bas Devorah. Shabbat Shalom and Aliyah. And we should only have good news for everybody, revealed good, revealing, and we should maximize our potential and the ultimate potential that the whole world has with the coming of Mashiach. May it happen speedily. Amen. Okay, we'll see you tonight.